Hi, my name is Karen Holmes. I'm the founder and director of the World Peace Organization for the One World Government. I have been working on my world peace marketing strategy information and working on getting it together so that I can introduce it for the event at Oxford and Stonehenge. And I have been fully aware that there has been a lot of mayhem that has been introduced or perpetrated related to the plan for the international government. When it was first open to debate, a lot of people liked the idea, but then got frustrated with the people who were resisting it. A friend of mine in his shop had a sign that said, at first whenever somebody comes up with a new idea, I'm paraphrasing it, at first there's passive resistance, then active resistance, and then everybody goes along believing that it was the most logical thing in the first place. Okay, so we've reached the point now where the plan for the international government was introduced, and at first there was passive resistance, but then now there has been a great deal of very active resistance. One of these is Vladimir Putin and what he's doing in Ukraine and trying to infiltrate into the United States, and all of these controlling our elections, and all of this is mayhem that he's perpetrating. So I wanted to focus on that today, and I wanted to say the genocide is over. I can actually pretty much say that the genocide is over. When the first thing is, I'm going to explain to you how it can be, and then take that idea forward. Okay, the information that I have, everything goes in cycles, and so the things that have happened to us are no different than anything that's ever happened in other lifetimes and other locations and on a smaller scale. But between the beginning of 2008 until the end of 2012, all the cycles lined up. And so this is a time of great change. With the beginning and the end of a cycle, there's always a lot of change going on. It's like if you're moving from one place to the other, you reach the point where you realize it's the end of your time there, and then you go through the process of letting go of things, and then you change it, and then you start your new cycle in a new place. Okay, that's what's been happening to mankind. When the end times were the Battles of Armageddon, let's see, these are the first Battle of Armageddon was, it's hard to read with the way I have this light. I have a different light here. It went to principles and power. When two people are sitting in a field and one is taken and and the other is left behind. That was the rapture, or what Christians have basically said, the end times in the Bible. Okay, so that happened with the Iraq War, which started with a preemptive strike on Iraq when no weapons of mass destruction were found. Then what happened at that point was because if it was a sense of judgment, the Iraq War devolved as a genocide, not a war. Okay, so there's been talk lately about the Uyghurs and the perpetrating a genocide here, or Tigray, or whatever, different places. There's been genocides that have been perpetrated on a small level, but what we didn't understand was that there was a global genocide that's been going on too, that affects everybody, and it came about as a result of the Iraq War. Okay, so now we've come to the point where that is basically played itself out. The passive resistance was people protesting the Iraq War, but then it became very devastating. But then it never has been resolved. It's like the United States never assumed responsibility for it, for our actions. And the reason for that was it would be a real blow to our ego, maybe. Okay, now then, so the battles of Armageddon have been fought when George Bush, when George Bush invaded, Saddam Hussein stood up and said, "I'm the rightful president of Iraq. You don't have the right to come in here. We're a sovereign country. We're part of the UN. You don't have the right to do this, to topple our government." Well, George Bush had been going along. The U.S. government had been doing hostile takeovers for a long time. Regime change, you could say. That has been a foreign policy. That's a failed policy. Okay. Then what happened was the ripples of effects have gone out from that. And I've used my oatmeal box demonstration of the power source invention and the light source invention, how it created ripples of effect. 3 times around we had George Bush, and then we had Barack Obama, and it was like this flip-flop idea in our government. And have you noticed that each new president is like a flip-flop of the other one? Okay, so when that flip-flop happened, then when Donald Trump got in, he took the power games to the extreme level, and that's why we have this totally active resistance to the plan. Donald Trump swore that he would work to undo everything that Obama had done while he was in office. Okay, so we've come to the end now of the genocide because people have been trying to rebuild their lives, like the pandemic has created all this chaos, and then now people are trying to get rid of the mask mandates, get rid of all the things, and let's just get back. I'm tired of this. Let's just get back to normalcy, and there is no normalcy anymore because we have to rebuild it, just like I had to do. This is me rebuilding my life after being homeless. So I understand how this works, that there's this time of chaos. But what happened is we had a time when in 2017 I introduced my letter to the Supreme Court, and that applies to every atom in the universe. Universal law applies to every atom in the universe. When the people who relied, it was like I was standing on principles, and then what happened was many people who rely on the existing structure went down into the games. Like Donald Trump declared that he was going to get rid of Roe v. Wade. He was going to do this. Our unalienable rights have been trampled on. And it's the same thing with Ukraine and such. So in the United States, we had Donald Trump, but then coming up, functioning for his own interests. But then we had the Republican Party who was shoring that up, and it was totally ludicrous for them to do that. They would make a statement that they were appalled by what Donald Trump had done, like the January 6th insurrection. But then they went along with him because there were 74 million voters that still support Donald Trump. That illusion was still there. So they've been supporting this illusion, this mayhem. But why that is so ludicrous is because people are backwards, and it's this mayhem that's been going on, the part of the genocide. All right, now, when I introduced the plan for world peace, I'm going to use my drawing here of the world's 7 major religions. This is the faith of purity. I've been going through the world peace marketing strategy, And the books I've been working on, the What Can I Do book. I need to put my old light back on so you can see better. But the World Peace Marketing Strategy is based on the faith of the Puree. So when I introduced the plan for the international government at the prayer circle in 2000, I channeled the book in 2000, actually 1999, and shared it with the prayer circle. So that's the point when everybody thought it was a great idea. We've got a plan for world peace. That's great. No more wars. We don't have to do this. And then nobody paid any attention to it because the UN, let the UN handle it. Let this happen. So the plan for world peace started here, and then I've gone around the planning circle to the point where the capacity, I'm demonstrating my capacity. Okay, when you go through here, you have a plan. Jesus taught the principles of having a plan. Okay, so we have this. We have crisis in the family, wars, genocides, and all the games. And people are standing up and protesting, but the government doesn't hear about it. So you have to have a plan that benefits everyone. Then as you go around the planning circle, for the first time, you make it, on the spiritual level, you make it possible. On the first time around, you make it probable. The second time around, you make it likely. When you do it on the mental level, you make it probable because you say, it is possible that we can do this. But then the likely, so we've been going through that, it's likely. When I, at this point here, between Hinduism and Confucianism, this is a very bad time period. Because if you don't have security, basically, this is your end-of-life crisis. So when people are facing their end-of-life crisis, they don't have any security. They can't deal with security issues, you could say. But the whole idea is that once you make it past your end-of-life crisis, I have a book called The Crisis, a series of books, the Crisis series, and it's basically how to overcome the end-of-life crisis. So when I applied that in my own life, because I was facing my end-of-life crisis, then I demonstrated in 2017, I demonstrated my capacity by being able to channel my letter to the Supreme Court. As I was starting around here, like this, on the opposite side of the circle were the people. So let's say at the prayer circle, people liked the idea, and they started to come out behind me like a line. People who were saying, we have a plan, we're going to follow Karen, but we're going to apply it in our own lives. And then, so the next group of people were the people who were following them. They went out and they said, we have a plan for world peace. Karen is working on this. And it started to create a line of people behind me who were following me. But then at the end, as it happened, it's like the game of telephone. And you start out, you tell something, and then you tell something to somebody else. And then, so as I was going around the circle, opposing me were the people who were saying, I'm going to steal this idea. I'm going to take it and I'm going to weave the solution. I'm going to lie and I'm going to tell everybody it's mine. And it maybe they were getting revenge on me. Okay, but as I walked around the circle and I got to this point, this part right here in Judaism, Moses taught the principles of productivity. But what happens if you have a project, you're bringing in the people, but what happens if you share it with people who are your enemies and they go through this and they're your adversaries, your enemies, your arch enemies, because they're trying to kill you. And that's the genocide. Okay, so as you are here, the pendulum is swinging back and forth between security issues and genocide. The power game that is associated with Judaism is genocide. So Christians wage war. Each of the religions teaches one segment of the information that you need to create your life. It's like a series of keys that you have to go around, like the old video games where you have to get the key to go to the next level. Okay, so you have these. Each of the religions also plays a major power game. So Christians wage war. Judaism, there's genocide. So the support level Buddhism has massacres to it, and that Islam has terrorism. So it's a power game based on, if you are denied a voice, people must raise their voice to be heard. Oftentimes if you're protesting and you don't have a voice, you raise your voice to be heard, oftentimes to the point of violence. So therefore, that idea is a power game between the Christians and the Muslims that say, I don't have to listen to your protests. I'm in charge here. I don't have to listen to you. I have my own ideas. And that's why people go to the government and they're protesting, but they're never heard unless they can come up with a plan that benefits everyone. But that got kind of shut down when I introduced a plan for the international government. People were protesting war, and since I've been alive, it was the Vietnam War, and people were protesting that and saying, we don't want war, and nobody listened. So yeah, they went off to war, and many people got killed. It's still sending out ripples of effects, although it seems like it's over. But people are still devastated by that. You talk to Vietnam vets, and they still never got their feet under them to be able to create their life. And in fact, not too long ago, when I first introduced one of my books about the Iraq War and the 7 soldiers who had been killed in Iraq, I did. It was a patch of heaven. I gave one of my books to a man who had been traumatized by the Second World War. When he read it, he was at peace with himself. He had watched one of his friends get shot down over Europe, and he never really got it. He never overcame that trauma. Okay, so when that happened, so when I overcame my end-of-life crisis, and I channeled my letter to the Supreme Court based on my capacity, that this was happening. As I reached this point, then the people who oppose me are coming down into the support level. If Donald Trump, for example, is working with Russia and China and saying, we don't want the plan for the international government, we're going to do this, and the Republican Party is saying to Obama, we don't want a plan for the international government. They were resisting it. They're saying, we don't want this, we don't want this. So let's say you had Xi Jinping and Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin all together saying, we don't like this plan for the international government. We don't want this. We want to be able to have this is the century for Asia to shine. And Donald Trump was saying before, this is all in the news, before, and I'm just putting it together, before the week before the election in 2016, Donald Trump didn't think he was going to win, but he was negotiating to put a Trump hotel in Moscow. So they're all there with the idea that they were going to stop the plan for the international government because we don't want that. We want to be able to wage war. So they've been building all these hypersonic missiles. They've been creating, China has been building aircraft carriers and going into the South China Sea, and these are ours, and we are going to take control of this idea, and we're going to control this, and we're going to control this, and we're going to control the economy, cybersecurity, and all this stuff. But the truth is that it's like like a end of life crisis for everybody with Ukraine and all this, and it's all because they don't want the plan. Let's say 3 people don't like the plan for the international government because it interferes with their agenda. Okay, but the ludicrous part about that, and then all the Republicans are saying, we don't like it either because we don't want to be equal to everybody else. And the principles of equality that Islam teaches are that for a fair trial, there has to be, they teach equality. For a fair trial, everybody has to be considered equal. Conflict resolution requires everybody being seen as equal. So when people are saying, this is not fair, I have the right to not be fair, doesn't work. So what is happening now is as the plan, as the letter to the Supreme Court started to change court cases, and it introduced that idea, it's becoming precedent. As that is happening, the idea of an international government is going out. Nobody can really stop it. In fact, before it went anywhere, before Donald Trump even had a clue about it, and even before he announced he had a plan for world peace, was it his plan or was it my plan? Okay, my organization's plan. There are people in 87 countries who like the idea. There's court cases that have been going out, but we like our own agenda. We don't want to be giving people their unalienable rights. People who've been denied their unalienable rights, people who've been dragged into a genocide are denied their unalienable rights. So we're seeing masses of abuses of power. It's like the letter to the Supreme Court triggered this massive abuse of power, saying we have the right to abuse our power. Nobody has the right to abuse their power. Now, if I'm right about this, I'm going to share with you an idea. There are 2 power games. There are 5 power games associated with revenge. There's war, genocide, massacres based on greed, slavery and human rights violations, and then terrorism. The 5 people come together, 5 groups of people come together, and they basically are getting revenge. Now, when you think of Donald Trump getting revenge on Biden's and on Obama and the Clintons, the Republicans, it's revenge, 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 revenge. Revenge is not a tool for creativity. It's people who get revenge and play the games of revenge are outside the universe. God is not the old man on the throne. God is Lady Gaia, who is nurturing. The male and female, we're created in God's image, male and female. Lady Gaia is nurturing, and I am that I am, the male aspect of God, is creative. So when you are outside, refusing to stand on the principles of universal law, God's law, those principles that are listed in the letter: equality, liberty, freedom, compassion, abundance, capacity, and tolerance. When you refuse to come up with legislation that's based on these 7 principles, and instead you're denying the voters the right to vote, you're making it harder for people to vote. Voter suppression, because that's the only way we can win, is if we suppress the votes. Your vote doesn't count anymore. We're going to get rid of your vote. We're going to just purge all these votes. This is a black community, so we don't want those voters here. Let's just get rid of those. Okay, let's come up with some way that make us still look good, but get rid of all those voters because they have too much power. Okay, that demonstrates a lack of power. So, when that letter to the Supreme Court went out, and I was functioning from this area for my capacity, I had made it past my end-of-life crisis, and I was functioning from my capacity, and then the people on the opposite side were in the support level. They became, the people who were opposing me are now going to have to go into the support level. they've progressed. The genocide basically is over. Donald Trump can't defend himself. He just keeps getting more and more court cases against him. They keep piling up. And that's the same thing that's happened with the United States, because we refuse to be a signatory of the international courts through the United Nations, the International Court of Justice and the criminal courts. So the genocide now, as this is happening and I'm demonstrating my capacity and all this stuff is coming together, I'm demonstrating my capacity because I have these books. I have channeled all these books. Now, revenge doesn't work because you're not dealing with you're outside of God. You're not standing on God's laws. It's like Donald Trump refusing to stand on the U.S. government laws, like he's eating government papers. I'm above the law. I don't want anybody to know what I'm doing, so I'm going to get rid of the evidence. When that happened, he's outside the government. He's outside the government. Same thing happens with revenge. You're outside of God. When you refuse to stand on God's law, you're outside of God. Then what you're doing is you cannot create the life you want, and you're facing the backlashes of universal law. People are saying, stop, 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 stop. I don't have to stop. I don't have to stop. If you are with somebody, it's Valentine's Day this week, if you are with somebody and you want to have a sexual relationship with that person, the person says, stop, 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 that becomes rape, doesn't it? Okay? You have to stop. Otherwise, you're going down into the power games and you're demonstrating laws of power. I wanted to share with you one thing here. So we had the Battles of Armageddon, where Saddam Hussein stood up and said he's the sovereign president of Iraq. And George Bush said, no, we're going to come in and get revenge on you. After all, this guy tried to kill my dad. Then he got all of the people, the coalition countries, to work with him with a character defamation campaign. The same thing has been happening now, where there's been, let's say, Donald Trump saying, no, I'm going to go in anyway. I have the power. Then he had all the Republican Party's members who basically supported him. And Donald Trump is saying, I'm going to hold you. I'm going to keep you here. I'm going to push out the people I don't like, and I'm going to protect the people I have. I'm going to hold on to you, and I'm going to push you away. On the extreme level, that's what leads to people getting murdered. Okay, so we have a real problem here, because we have a war imminent, and Joe Biden is talking about drawing people out. When he got in, he thought he could into office. When Joe Biden got into office, he said, I've been in the Senate a long time. I can work with these guys. These guys are my friend. But he couldn't work with them because they're getting revenge. They're the people who are saying, I'm in it for the money. I'm in it for the voters. I can't win unless I cheat, kind of thing. I have to maintain control. There's this flip-flop idea all the time between the parties. Now, I wanted to end this video with something that's kind of talking about my books. I have all my books. This book is the outline series on creativity. This is a series of essays, 5 groups of essays that I channeled, and they come in a binder form. And there's, on the first segment, there's session 1, the 4 rules to create the life you want. Then there is a drawing. There's the cycle of misunderstandings related to the 7 deadly sins. But there's a chart here that people who are weaving the illusion need to be very, very aware of. There's 5 games associated with revenge. 3 of them are just normal power games. And when the pendulum swings out, then like a war, everybody has to be considered equal conflict resolution. The pendulum swings back. But if you have people playing the 5 power games, there are 2 of them that are based on weaving an illusion, the grand lie. So I'm talking about the grand lie now, and the people who are lying. The people who are lying. There's the 2 games. One leads to genocide and one leads to slavery and human rights violations. Okay, this chart here in this book, remember, I didn't write these, I channeled them. So I've been going through this information and trying to piece this because I'm just like everybody else. I play the power games. I get the backlashes from the games. I'm trying to figure out how to create my life, how to go through this idea to create my life. I have all this information. And in fact, Archangel Michael told us a funny story, and I'll tell it at the end. Okay, there are 2 power games that are based on weaving an illusion. The power games are based on 3 fears: loss, death, and failure. So what I realized here is that the people, in speaking from my own experience, and which is what I'm sharing with you now is my own experience, when I had all this resistance and the mayhem and saying, we don't like this, we're lying, we're going to weave all this illusion and we're going to trap people into it and we're going to create this mayhem and we're playing this game of illusion. And I'm standing there going, why would anybody do that kind of stuff? Why would anybody do that? People the one thing that everybody wants is to create the life they want, but they're relying on the games to do that, and they're outside of the universe. They're facing the backlashes from the games. If Donald Trump had a plan for world peace, the whole idea is his own plan or stealing mine. Okay, my idea. It's an open source idea. It's based on the Constitution and the principles of the cooperation of nature. But what he can't do is he can't channel information from God on how to create the life you want. Basically, he just has an idea, and it's obfuscation. It's based on 2 fears. The games that are being played, there are 2 games, and 2 of them are when you have lack of compassion, like facing all the backlashes of when people are angry with you and they're protesting and they don't like it and they've got all these lawsuits against you like Donald Trump is in. And lack of capacity, Donald Trump and the people that he's gotten in, they're functioning from lack of capacity. That's what it is. Those people like Marjorie Taylor Greene, people are making fun of her because she doesn't know the difference between gazpacho and Gestapo at this time. But she's just functioning outside of her capacity. Everybody has capacity. Everybody has to demonstrate their capacity when they create their life. But the problem with it is they're not people. They're people who got invited in because they are light bearers to their own people. They're not. It's like they're auditioning for Donald Trump, but they're outside of their capacity. If somebody has started out and in local government, for example, somebody wants to become a senator, what they do is they, generally speaking, they start out on the community level. They young and they're on the school board because they've got kids in school or whatever, and then they might go to the community, the county level and become a county commissioner or whatever it is in your community, or they might become like the mayor and the county commissioner. Then they go to state level and try to become something on the state government level, and then they have their capacity. They understand how government functions. Then it's a smooth transition to the federal level. But for somebody like Marjorie Taylor Greene or Lauren Boebert or Tommy Tuberville, who didn't know that there were 3 branches of government, okay, he was he's a football guy. He knows about football. He's a coach, but he didn't know about the three branches of government. And the people who invited him to come in, or Lauren Boebert or Marjorie Taylor Greene, they did it because they brought them in because they had supporters. They had like lots of YouTube channel people or lots of Facebook people or whatever. They had their support level there. They had one of them had a bar and with the right, so they had their agenda too, but they're outside their capacity. They never went through the steps. Same with Donald Trump. I'm a businessman, he said. I'm rich. How did that get it? He'd never had any government experience. That's ridiculous to reach that point. Now, the only way that could work is if their expertise is in solving problems. So if you take an average person who is willing to listen to people, let's say, can solve problems and demonstrates that step by step by step by step on every level, sure, I have a plan that solves this problem, and working on the community level, then has a way to deal with the county level, and then has a way to deal with the state level, and then has a way to deal with the federal level, and maybe even the international level, then what that person can do is that person could go in for one term and say, I have plans that solve all these problems, and I would like to introduce them on the international level on how to solve these problems. You see, that is the only way it can work. With the Republican Party saying, we're going to bring in these Second Amendment people because we want to, or the people who want to overturn Roe v. Wade, those people who can't and don't know how to solve problems, and all they are is, I've got 74 million voters who, because they believe the lie. Okay, the problem with that is, and with the Republican Party, they're destroying the Republican Party because of this. They can't solve problems. All they want to do is keep those voters and keep lying, keep getting revenge, and it's ludicrous. They're not demonstrating their capacity. All they're doing is they're going to end up in jail. They're at this point where the end of life crisis for the Republican Party. And in a way, the same thing is happening in the Democratic Party because they're not solving problems either. Saying, I know how to work with these guys isn't enough. It's if Joe Biden is not addressing the root cause of the problem, he's going down. It's the same thing. So the only way that we can solve this problem is by people on each level coming up and saying, okay, I have a plan that benefits everyone. Let's say that if I was running for president of the United States, what I would do is I would solve the homeless problem in my town, because there is a homeless problem. But there's a homeless problem in every town. And if I have a plan that can solve that problem, then I can go to any town and solve that problem. That my plan can be applied in every town. If I want to go to the community level or the county level, I can do the problems on the county level. I have to be aware of what's happening on every level, and then I'm competing on as I'm solving problems on these levels, coming up with plans. Then I can demonstrate to people what my plan is. Open it up for debate. I have a plan for world peace. Excuse me. I have members in 87 countries. I'm a light bearer. I'm an influencer on the internet. I'm exaggerating. Okay, but I do have members in 87 countries, and I have a plan that's been opened up for debate. I have a letter to the Supreme Court that solves the problems, the overview problems I get, because all the 7 deadly sins basically are countered by the letter to the Supreme Court. I can solve a problem that Joe Biden can't, because all he has to do is support the plan for world peace, and the Republican Party can't do it anymore. They can't do it. If there is a plan for release and it's based on universal law, then if Vladimir Putin or Xi Jinping are ready to infiltrate in the United States and can topple our economy and do this and those torpedoes and such, basically it's just ludicrous because it destabilizes everything. The United States is a melting pot that has a great influence all over, but we can't do that anymore. We cannot solve problems all over the world based on the idea of regime change and things like that. The U.S. government I have 60 government proposals basically that are going to be introduced. The 60 government proposals, each one addresses one failed U.S. foreign policy. We have 4 economic stimulus plans, and the first one is the exit strategy for Iraq. The drain to the Middle East, where there's a drain to the Middle East, and pulling out the troops without supporting the plan for the international government is not enough. It's not enough. So what's happening now is I'm going to give you, if I'm right about this, if I'm right, and I'm not running for president, by the way, I have no interest. I would like to teach people how to do this as part of this framework of people that we're creating. But there's these 2 power games that are based on the grand lie. The people who are weaving the illusion basically they're playing the games. And the problem with it is the truth eventually comes out. The games are being countered by this letter to the Supreme Court based on the principles. You cannot be an elected official and have voter suppression and justify that anymore. You cannot wage war with anybody and justify that anymore, because that doesn't, you can't do that. It doesn't work anymore. The games, the one thing that George Bush did is he collapsed the power games. They don't work anymore. When you play them on an innocent person, you collapse your own power base. And I'll go into that in other videos. But the games based on weaving an illusion, if you have lack of capacity, an issue related to lack of capacity, like let's say like Lauren Boebert or Marjorie Taylor Greene or whatever, whoever, lack of capacity and lack of compassion. Like, I'm important and people all over the world are laughing at me. Lack of compassion and lack of capacity. What happens is that event comes along and makes them feel that they can't get their life, and that's what leads to pancreatic cancer. So I'm telling you that an issue related to lack of capacity and an issue related to lack of compassion, and then that one event comes along, like being arrested or like being expelled from Congress. Now, I'm not saying that is going to cause any problems, but what happens is there's going to be a lot of pancreatic cancer cases that are starting to come out. If you have lack of compassion here, okay, over here in Hinduism, if you can't deal with the security issues of it, if Donald Trump can't deal with security issues, he's susceptible to pancreatic cancer. That's the point where he has to start functioning from his own capacity, and that would be really hard for him to do that now because he's destroyed his brand. Okay, so I'm not talking about assassination. I'm not talking about anything like that. I'm just saying that people who are in that situation are susceptible to pancreatic cancer. But I have a project that's a pancreatic cancer project, so we can help people. I can help people who have that problem. In fact, if you know anyone who has pancreatic cancer, you might want to check on our website for one of the blogs, because it explains how to overcome pancreatic cancer. Okay, so I told you I was going to tell you Archangel Michael's story. there's one of our books is going to become, by the way, Archangel Michael is one of my guides. My gift from God is to be able to communicate with anyone on the other side. I'm a psychic, and that's my gift. So at the prayer circle, Archangel Michael used to come. He helps to cut the change. He has a blue sword. This is, and what he does is he uses it to cut the change. Blue is the color of conflict resolution. That's why my books, the color blue has to do with security. These are the colors of the rainbow. Red is the color of creativity. Okay, so Archangel Michael came to us one night at the prayer circle, and he had a joke for us. He said his jokes are funny, but they make you stop and think. And the story was that two bears were standing, like big grizzly bears, Kodiak bears, brown bears were standing in a stream fishing for salmon. And when it went by, the bear swatted it up on the shore, and then swatted another one, and then by the time the bear finished, he turned around, and there was so many fish on the shore that the bottom ones were getting rotten. Okay, so now what I have here is I'm like the grizzly bear who has so much information that the ones on the bottom have gotten rotten. It's not that they're bad, they're edible. I'm trying to go through these and finding information, digesting the information, and I don't want them to get rotten. And now, who knows, maybe so much time has passed that the young people who are supposed to live in peace and the people who are supposed to maintain peace are going to just leave me in the dust, and people in my age group will just die out because we didn't ever fulfill. I was in college when the Vietnam protests were going in peace, So instead of my generation standing up and living based on the principles of peace, a lot of people are, but a lot of people just never got the message and never wanted to do it. So it's time now for this to come to fruition. So what I'm basically saying is the genocide is over. Donald Trump cannot weave the grand lie because he just has lack of capacity and demonstrating lack of compassion. His brand has been trashed. He might have taken money, made money from his rallies and such, but basically he lives a very expensive lifestyle, and he can't maintain that anymore because his brand, which is what he has relied on for a long time, that he's wealthy, and he's demonstrating that he's not doing that anymore. He's just maintaining the illusion, and the illusion is collapsing. All right, so that's all I wanted to talk about today. I'm going to just say that the world is changing now. The genocide is over, or is ending. The resistance, once you reach the point, when you have a plan, once you reach the point, you go around and you overcome your end-of-life crisis. I have books on how to do that. That's part of the stack of fish that I have. Then you have to demonstrate the principles of Confucianism and what China is demonstrating. Now, in a previous video, I mentioned that China is trying to build its economy. There's a glitch in that plan. And the reason for it is because Buddhism is the support level. This is the wealth level here. So let's say the Republican Party here wants money and power, and Trump wants money and power. China wants to build its economy, but it's based on capacity. We're demonstrating our capacity. China is very proud. Confucius taught the principles of capacity, but the principles of prosperity were taught by Gautama Buddha. If these two share an idea, these two share an idea, these two share an idea. So it's like as it goes around it, you're learning the principles of it. And that's where this idea comes about for the Faith of the Pure Ray, which will be a school that teaches people that they can go to. So that's my project level here, is to start setting up schools based on this idea. The first idea is understanding how the schism formed, though. How the schism happened, how everybody ended up in the abyss from the ripples of effects. So I keep on going on this. I shouldn't. It's time for me to go. So I ask that you like, share, and subscribe. But most of all, share, because this information is important. Thank you for stopping by.